Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sounds from the Studio, brought to you by Contemporary Craft. Contemporary Craft fosters the use of traditional craft materials such as ceramic, fiber, glass, metal, and wood to make art. Our community honors the history and heritage of craft while showcasing modern, exploratory work.
And since our organization is located in Pittsburgh, PA, we decided to bring some of the stories of our exhibiting and studio artists to a broader audience by way of this podcast. I'm Rachel, the Executive Director at Contemporary Craft.
And I'm Kahmeela, a podcaster and art enthusiast. We are your hosts for this journey, and there are many ways to keep up with us. You can go to the Facebook page and like it, Contemporary Craft, on Twitter at SCCPGH, Instagram at SCCPGH, or just go to contemporarycraft.org.
Today is a big day. We are kicking off Season 3 of Sounds from the Studio, and this season is taking a new turn. We're focusing entirely on the newly formed archive at Contemporary Craft. As an organization, we've been fortunate that those who have come before us have saved nearly everything. And by that, I mean exhibition postcards and catalogs, holiday event invitations from our first site, the store in Verona, newspaper collections about and written by our founder, and even more exciting, a permanent collection of objects from artists that have spanned the lifetime of contemporary craft. To pull all of this together in a cohesive way, we hired someone to take the lead, and that someone is Sydney Leslie, our Archives and Creative Projects Manager. Sydney has spent the past year focused on this work and is entering the next phase, activating the archive. This season of the podcast will be the start of that. She's going to take the mic and interview voices from the past. We're looking forward to sharing the history of contemporary craft with you because it's the cornerstone of how we build our future. I'm delighted for us to introduce you to the host for the season so that you can meet Sydney and learn about the work she's been doing and her plans for the future of this season of the podcast.
This is going to be exciting. This new season is kind of like, the history, the thing that history buffs are looking forward to, and and those general hoarders, people who like a lot of things, collections, and that could be. Now we'll just say it. We'll keep it at that, collections. So, welcome, Sydney.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. I'm excited to give the audiences a break from my voice, and to introduce them to someone new and exciting and find out more about you so they all know, so our audience knows who they will be taking this journey with for the next few episodes.
Yeah, I literally cannot wait to dive into this conversation because, Sydney, I feel like you now hold the keys to so much valuable information that's going to inform our local community and, I believe, the field of craft at large from everything that you've been doing. But before we jump into that, we should talk about you. Can you share a little bit with our listeners about your journey to becoming the archives manager? Kind of like, what's your educational background, or do you think there's any projects that might have led to this role for you?
Sure, yeah, definitely. So obviously we're in Pittsburgh. I'm originally from Virginia, born and raised. I moved here in 2015 to go to school at Pitt for art history and museum studies. So I feel like the museum studies program at Pitt kind of gave me a general background of archives and working with collections, more so the collections part. But I was somewhat interested in the archives part of that too. So for our museum studies program, I had to do an internship. So I ended up doing that at Associated Artists of Pittsburgh, which is actually right down the street from us. And so I was just organizing their exhibition catalogs, which were then sent to Heinz History Center, which is also pretty similar to our project that we did here. And that was kind of my first foray officially. Otherwise, I had done like smaller projects at some smaller galleries and working on their histories. But yeah, and then I started here sorry, I kind of got lost for a second. I ended up doing my graduate studies at Carnegie Mellon for arts management. And so I started here at Contemporary Craft as a marketing intern. Because I'll be honest, I never really knew what I wanted to do exactly. I knew that I wanted to be in the arts. But Rachel had seen that I had a background in art history and museum studies and asked if I was interested in kind of looking into this archival project and organizing some stuff. So that's how I started working here in that department.
And we're so excited that you fell in love with craft.
Thank you. Yeah, I will say I do not have a craft background. I was kind of just general visual arts. But the more that I've worked with the collection and the archive, I've just learned so much, and there's so much rich history and tradition to craft that I truly do love it now.
So did it feel overwhelming when you started at Contemporary Craft? Like how did you start your process?
I would say 100% overwhelming. The project right now has expanded much larger than it originally started. So when Rachel asked me to kind of approach this project, it was only the exhibitions archive. So it was really just exhibitions catalogs, and kind of ordering those and putting them together. And through the years, I would say we kept probably 50 copies of every single exhibition catalog that we had. So we had a ton of stuff. We don't have a ton of space here, unfortunately. So we kind of had to go through those first. So what we did there was kind of kept a collection of those catalogs for ourselves, a collection for Heinz History Center, and then a collection kind of just to like keep in the background, keep safe, no use whatsoever. And we also did that with our postcards. And from there, we kind of expanded into the exhibition archive files. So we had a lot of just general paperwork from exhibitions, and those got organized from there.
Part of your process and part of your job, is it also for you to help to protect these items from the elements as well, like to make sure that they're in these nice, safe, sealed, waterproof, mold-proof?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I will say that we're not on the scale of a place kind of like the Warhol, where they have all the very up-to-date archival materials. We are very generously funded for this project, but I will say at times we are kind of working with what we have. So we've done our best to, especially with like paper, get everything into like acid-free materials and stuff like that. But there's a ton of stuff that we would like to do further, obviously.
Is digitizing also a part of it?
Yeah, definitely. We actually just got donated like a really nice photo scanner that also does like films and negatives. So that's a huge turning point for us in this project, that I can now do that myself and not have to outsource it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So how did you even figure out like what kind of process that you're going to use to make this order happen?
I really kind of just went off of what had already been organized. I didn't want to kind of like overstep and create something totally new. Obviously with the paper archives, there were certain stuff that we got rid of, like old artist financials, that we didn't really need to have. But otherwise,
these guys were paid. That's done.
Exactly. That's none of my business anymore. Right. But I kind of just followed the order of everything was in, filed based on the exhibitions. And so from there, I kind of just organized everything kind of further. So before, everything was in one file, and now we have them organized into like press related documents or exhibition specific or exhibition planning. And then kind of just like listing out and making sure everything like has a number, so then we can find everything and know where everything is.
Sydney, just to level set for people that might be listening for the first time or not actually know, can you tell people when we were founded? So essentially, how many years old is Contemporary Craft? And put into context, when you start talking about exhibition catalogs and postcards, how many exhibitions are we talking about? How many postcards are we talking about?
I think easily over 100 exhibitions at this point, right? I don't know an exact number off the top of my head, but we were founded in 1971 just as a store. And so we have a ton of kind of promotional postcards and stuff from that in the 8 years before we started having exhibitions. And then so in 1979, we had our first official exhibition, and then carried through until currently. So
yeah, so I just want to give people some context that we're talking about over 100 catalogs, over 100 postcards, and that's without even getting into the materials related to the store, because for so long those were kind of very separate, like together but separate.
Right, yeah.
And so I
think for the first few months of me working, I was solely working on the exhibition catalogs, but I know Rachel saw me in the back room. I was surrounded by boxes. I mean, most of the day I am surrounded by boxes, but for it just to be exhibition catalogs, it was pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I know that there are piles of incredible finds just in the ephemeral materials alone. So we're talking about zany invitations to surprising exhibition topics or catalogs. We've had a really good time, taking a walk down memory lane there with, wow, who knew? So I'm curious, what have been the most kind of intriguing materials that you've come across and why?
Yeah. I think the first one that comes to me off the top of my head is some of the correspondences that we've had with, there were 2 exhibitions in the 80s that we did that we featured Dale Chihuly, who is now like this incredibly well-known glass artist. But this was kind of like early to mid-career for him. But we had kind of a series of correspondences with his studio in Washington State where we were buying one of his pieces for our collection. And we just got part of the collection appraised. So seeing the prices that we were talking about back then and what I know now, it's really crazy. And then this is not necessarily exhibition or contemporary craft related, but when we were in our second location outside of Verona, PA, was in the Strip District in Pittsburgh. And that neighborhood was known back in the day for having, like, it was all produce terminal and markets and stuff like that. And there was we were in the produce terminal. So across the street, there was a banana company. It was like Acme Banana or something.
Banana, yeah.
And in the 30s,
a banana company.
Yeah, it was just bananas. So I guess that they did.
Hey.
But I guess in the 30s, to ripen these bananas, they had a ripening room that they pumped full of whatever gas. And in the 30s, there was a massive explosion, and it basically, I think destroyed the building. Luckily, there was only one person there. But somehow we have a receipt from that banana company from the 30s. I don't know why or how we got it, but that was one of the most incredible finds to me.
Yeah, so Contemporary Craft was opened in the 70s.
Yeah.
And you've got a receipt from Just Bananas.
Exactly. Yeah.
From the 30s.
Yeah. Well, I found this receipt from this banana company, and I was like, why would we have this? Obviously, it's in the Strip District. It's on Smallman Street where we used to be. And then I looked into it, and it was like this whole thing, and I was like, this is awesome. I am obsessed that we have this.
So funny, a little off, but funny. So I worked at Contemporary Craft years ago. I was here, I left, I came back. But in that first iteration, it was storing Contemporary Craft in the Strip District, in the produce terminal. And that building, I don't know the full history either, but I know that Acme Banana still stood. And I remember looking at it every day, adjacent to the building, and I believe they still did business in there till some point, at any rate.
Oh, okay.
The fun thing about being in the terminal is that most of that building was not active while we were in it. We were just kind of the anchor tenant. And there were all these materials from when produce was being sold. So I'm guessing somehow somebody's desk or something someone found. Because I remember records of buying large bulk of produce or who they were selling produce to, and just coming across those files sometimes. So that's amazing. And I remember when they tore Acme Banana down and how we all watched. We just,
I know, now it's just a parking lot. So every time I drive past with someone, I'm like, you know what happened in that parking lot?
It was one of my favorite stories. Were there bananas in the air? What happened?
Yeah.
What's amazing to me is the amount of times I have lived in, the amount of years I've lived in Pittsburgh and the amount of times I have spent in the Strip District. I have never noticed this banana company
Yeah.
ever.
I'll send you
Like,
a
I don't
photo. I
understand
have
how
a
I
photo.
missed it.
I will send it to you.
That's what's so beautiful about Pittsburgh. There's so much odd history here.
Right? So what do you think you're going to be doing with all of this material? Like in the future, do we see like some sort of exhibit at Contemporary Craft, like the history of contemporary craft? And but I also heard, but you also mentioned something about the Heinz History
Hmm.
Center as well. So like, what's the end game here? What's the goal?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely would love to digitize everything that we have and have it on some sort of database on our website where people could just go and do their own research and see what we have, but also open the archives for people to come and do research if they're interested in craft.
Mm.
I know that Heinz History Center also has their own plans to digitize what they have from us. And I would say what they have is slightly different. It's like more, they have exhibition history, but also more like personnel and building details and stuff like that, where ours is more so just focused on exhibitions and permanent collection.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I've toyed a lot with the idea of, traveling the collection. I think that would be awesome. A large chunk of our collection is from our first exhibition called Art and Modern Handcrafts, which was a traveling exhibition. So I think that would be really cool to like call upon that history and do it again with our now updated collection with more recent works too.
Yeah, that's really a good shift because I think, well, to your point, the History Center, if I can interject, I think they were a little more interested in what is the Pittsburgh relationship to contemporary craft, the facilities, the services, the more regional artists that we worked with, whereas many people who are listening probably know we do represent artists from all over the country as well as international. So what we have maintained is that much more broad focus on the artist, whereas they're focused on the organization, maybe is a better delineation.
Okay.
But if we did shift to the permanent collection for a second, can you tell listeners, like, what have you been finding in the crates and the boxes? Who are some of the artists who have work represented in that history with us?
Yeah, so it's definitely like a huge array. We kind of go from from our collection in the early 70s, we have local hobbyists and people that maybe didn't go on to have like a huge career in art, to, as I said earlier, like Dale Chihuly, Lydia Thompson, people like that. But it is really kind of all over the place, which I love because it gives a really broad representation of what's called like the post-war studio craft movement, where things were getting a little more like non-traditional and experimental. But we kind of have both sides of that, which is cool.
Yeah, I think it was fun during Out of Hand when we did that sneak peek, and people were really surprised to see that we have like a Lenore Tawney piece.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even as I was going through the list and opening boxes, I was constantly surprised by what I was finding, definitely.
Do you have a favorite?
Yes, I do have a favorite. And there's a long story that goes along with it, kind of, that I love telling people.
Let's hear it, yeah.
Okay, but the artist is called Michelle Clifton. That is her name. The piece is, it's soft sculpture. It's a giant, what looks like an Adidas shoe, but there's a foam insert, so it's a bed. You can like get into it and then hang it on the wall when you're done with it. And it's just so quirky and weird, and I love it. And as I was kind of researching all these people in our collection, because obviously, as I said, not all these people went on to have careers. So I was trying to find what they were doing now, if they were deceased, if they went on to do other stuff like that. And so when I was looking at Michelle, I could not find anything on her. And, there were a lot of people like that, so it really wasn't anything, but it was a little infuriating, I will say, because as someone who grew up with the internet, I like to think I'm good at internet stalking, but I couldn't find anything. But
yeah, I mean, sometimes you get those people who just don't have an internet footprint.
Exactly.
They just don't.
It's crazy to me, but I understand it. But so a couple months pass, and we end up highlighting her piece on our Instagram page. And we post it, a week goes by, nothing happens. And then Mandy, our marketing person, comes to me one day and she goes, "Hey, we got a comment on that Instagram post of the shoe bed saying that she's the creator and she had no idea she was in our collection and to email her, and this is her email." And so I ended up emailing her, and she's just had this incredible life. An incredible connection we had, but she went to art school, was an artist, ended up going into more so like TV production with her husband, and they ended up doing that for years. I think they worked with like NBC, stuff like that. And now she just does sound healing, and so works with, what are they called? They're like sound bowls, and the vibrations are like supposed to be very healing.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we ended up connecting, and she had no idea that we had her piece. I ended up finding another one of her pieces much later. And we both were kind of like, this feels so cosmic that we've been connected in this way. Follow up a few months later, a guy comes into the gallery. I wasn't in the office that day, but he comes in saying that he saw this shoe bed on our Instagram, and that he had seen this shoe in a catalog when he was a child. And it inspired him to like go to school for interior decorating and create all these different pieces that were like kind of similar. Like she had made shoes and stuff like that. And he ended up making like chairs that were like football helmets and stuff like that. It was super cool. And just, so he ended up coming in and seeing the piece, and it was like a full circle moment for him. And I was like, this is so, like, this would have never happened if I wasn't working with this collection. And I'm so grateful that like I got to have that experience, because it really does feel cosmic in that way.
I feel like that's a fabulous concept for a film.
Definitely.
I think you should get started on that script.
Hey, I mean, if anybody
I
would
see
like
the
to pick that
48-hour
up.
film festival collaboration happening.
Yeah.
Right. Wait, so how big is this bed? Is this like actual bed size, this piece?
It's probably, it's got to be 5 or 6 feet.
It's
Like I could
Wow.
definitely lay in it. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. So yeah, that's really great that you were able to find that you found the backstory on this thing just kind of like happenstance, and like, thank you, Instagram. Like,
Yeah.
this is the kind of thing, like, this is what social media is supposed to be used for.
Exactly. Like when I had
For-
pretty much like given up on finding, and now she's trying to like restart like her art career and doing more fiber work. So it's been really awesome.
Does she want it back?
She does not know. She still has several. She's actually trying to get rid of the ones that she does have.
So if anybody's looking for a shoe bed,
giant shoe bed. I think there are 2 different sizes. We also have a big soft sculpture pencil that she did that I found much later.
So, okay, do you know around what time period these got to you? And so she has no idea how you guys got them?
No, so we definitely got them in the 70s because they were in the store. The shoe
okay.
at least was in our first exhibition, which was a lot of stuff from the store, just because we were like, craft is art, and when you come here you were buying art. And we have she used to make these like hand-drawn like pricing sheets, and we also have one of those, but she has no idea how we might have gotten it. I know that Betty Raphael, our founder, used to go on buying trips kind of in New York and through the Hudson Valley, and she's based in the Hudson Valley. So I would assume it was probably through something like that, but otherwise it's still kind of a mystery.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. See, there's some of the fun stuff you discover and when you can experience when you become an archivist.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what's next for the display plans that are related to the collection?
Yeah, so we had a small display at Out of Hand, which is our fundraising gala, this past May, which was really fun because I don't think the collection has really been shown off in, I don't know, maybe at least a decade. Because I think when we moved from the strip district to here, it kind of just stayed in boxes and was, put to the wayside as we moved and figured out everything else. So I'm really excited to be displaying it again. We had the small display at Out of Hand, and then actually starting in September, we're going to have a small showing of parts of the collection in our Jerry K cases from September until I think October or November, and that might become an annual thing. So that's really exciting.
Nice.
So there are so many things that we could talk about today, but I know we only have so much time. So before we start to wrap it up, I thought it might be nice if we spend a little bit of our time together focused on what's coming up this season. Can you give us a spoiler related to who you might be interviewing or some of the topics you might cover?
Yeah, definitely. I know that I'll be speaking with Janet McCall, who was our executive director just before you. I think she was there for 25 years, from like 95 until 2020, 2021, something like that. And she began our social justice series. So I'm excited to talk to her about programming and stuff like that, especially. I'll also be talking to Kate Lyden, who was I think she did a ton of different roles, but I think her final one was exhibitions director, but she was here for 30 years. And from like the very early days of the Strip District. So that'll be fun. I think I'll also be actually interviewing Michelle Clifton, who made the shoe.
Nice.
And she's just so fun to talk to. So I'm very excited about that.
So now you've found yourself you've gotten a relationship out of this random shoe. Like,
absolutely.
A new bestie.
I have plans. I think I'm gonna go visit her. Like, we're friends now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's fun. I know you're still kind of working on like the programming of things, but I think it's fun to see how that starts to come together too, and some of the things we've talked about in the past on the podcast, like the artist residency or artists that teach workshops, and how people can kind of draw from the collection.
Yeah,
or,
definitely.
use it as part of their residency and or in a workshop. So I think I'll be really curious how this season unfolds, and in general, the things that you're working on and coming up with to make connections.
Definitely.
All right.
Nice.
Thank you.
All right. So now we will come on up to the question that everybody has to answer who graces the presence of the Sounds from the Studio. Can you give us a list of your songs, the 3 songs that describe your work?
Yes. I have a list in my notebook, and I had to like cross out like 5 because I was like, I gotta pick the right one. But the first one is...
It's a difficult thing to do.
It is so difficult. The first one is by Vashti Bunyan, and it's called I'd Like to Walk Around in Your Mind. Because it kind of, I don't know, that kind of feels like while I'm going through these archives and like, I don't know, even like Janet McCall's like notes and stuff like that, I'm like in someone else kind of,
Oh, absolutely. It's such a random, I mean, it's a wonderful thing and it's a beautiful thing. It needs to be done and all that. But I'm sure at some point, some level, there's this kind of like this little bit of creep factor that you might have, like you're looking at somebody else's stuff and like looking through other people's boxes.
Absolutely. So. I also think that Vashti Bunyan, she's a folk singer, but I'm pretty sure that she like made this album and then it got big like way later in her career. So it kind of, I don't know, it feels almost like archival, like digging and finding stuff.
Yeah.
And then my second one is Wishing, parentheses, If I Had a Photograph by Flock of Seagulls. Just because I love the line. I mean, it's a love song, but I just love the line, if I had a photograph of you as something to remind me, I wouldn't spend my life just wishing. And that feels very like, I don't know, keeping a history and stuff like that,
Also, it's good to know Flock of Seagulls had other songs.
Absolutely. Yeah. They have some bangers. They have some hits. And then my last one, this is kind of just in line with what I like work to and listen to when I'm working, but the song Finger Bib by Aphex Twin. I don't know. I find myself listening to a lot of kind of like electronic instrumental stuff.
I'll bet.
Yeah. Not because like the work is monotonous, but it kind of just like keeps a steady pace and going. So, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
Those are my choices.
Nice. Those are all very good choices, and I like how they kind of they go through. There's like 3 different genres there
Yeah,
for the most part,
definitely.
and
Yeah.
it's a nice
Yeah.
mix. Well, I guess at that, this is us, me and Rachel, like officially passing the mic to Sydney. Like you're taking over. How do you feel about that?
I was about to say no pressure, right? But no, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to talk to people about the history in the archive. I was almost like worried about this being like, will I have enough to say? But I realize I have a lot to say when it comes to our archive, so it'll be fine.
Yeah,
I'm so
I'm
excited. Yeah.
sure. It's awesome.
Sydney, I look forward to hearing future episodes and who you talk to. In closing, if people have not been following along yet with Sydney's journey through contemporary crafts past, I want to let you know she's also been producing some short videos that we've been posting on Instagram. So these have been pretty in-demand footage. You're a bit of Instagram famous, just saying. So they take a look at the items and the objects, and I'm sure, Sydney, there's going to be more. So we're looking forward to those. So if you want to take a look and you haven't, you can find them on our Instagram account, which is SCCPGH. And you can also search the Instagram hashtag #ArchiveThisCraft. So be on the lookout, take a look, and to Kahmeela's point, I'm excited to pass the mic and just listen.
Sounds from the Studio is produced by Rugged Angel Productions for Contemporary Craft. Hosted by Rachel Rearick and Kahmeela Adams with production support by Mandy Wilson. Please subscribe to and rate the show wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to share. Thanks for listening.